Mhm.
Thanks, Susan. Are we live?
Yes.
Hi, Shelley.
Hi.
Are you still trying to figure out how to block us all out before the meeting starts? That was, I thought maybe you guys were all experts in Zoom by now.
We're going to be there by the end of the summer, I think.
Just long enough for us to change how we do things, right?
Yes.
Turn my big fan off. I think I'm going to pause you and I'm going to go get a glass of water since it's so wonderfully hot out here. Are you and Darren going to be separate, or are you guys going to be in the same room, or what?
We're going to be separate.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be back in just a minute.
Shoot.
We're just waiting on a few more members.
I'm back.
Brad, we're just waiting on a few more members.
Okay. How did I happen to sneak in? Forgot to pull up the minutes. That was an oversight. You did send them out, didn't you?
I did. They would have been on the second email with the original agenda.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. July 8th. Okay. Huh. Well, I'll be.
1, 2, 3. Ace members, what does it take for a quorum?
We need 5. We have 5. We're good.
I'm here too. I don't know if you can.
Well, I don't have the official agenda, but I do have the notes that we were exchanging. So that should be enough to get me going. For whatever reason, I don't have that. Okay. Hi,
I did
Amy.
not hear from Brad. I did not hear from Travis, and I know Andrea can't make it, so I think we have everybody.
Okay. And there we go. Helps when you click the full button so that you're not just looking at yourself. Hi, all.
Hi, Brad.
Wow, I see some nice offices. I like it, especially David's. Can I get that motorcycle in the background there?
We have them all on our website. So you can
Yeah.
download all the murals in town to make them part of your background.
Oh,
Darren, in fact, has also done the same. So
what a
mine
cool,
is,
what
this
a
is,
cool idea.
this is Talk Gallery's mural on the side of their building. And Darren has the mural on the side of Brian Hart's building.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And we have a new member, Paul, is that right?
Steve, Paul. Paul's the last name.
Yes, I am so sorry.
No worries at all.
Well, Shelley, why don't we officially kick this off if you want to go through and get roll call so that we've got everybody checked in, and looks like we've got Dan with us also. So, you know, let's get things going.
Okay. Andrea Mannion. Amy Gallegos.
Here.
Dylan Rye.
Here.
Brad Nixon.
Here.
Travis Ridley. Judith Dunlop.
Here.
Jason White. Nathan Hoag. Steve Paul.
Here.
David Carroll, Chamber of
Here.
Commerce.
Here.
Rita Russell. And Darren. We have a quorum.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I know it's been kind of hit or miss this summer or the last couple, 3 months. What we want to do, first of all, welcome again, Steve. I would love to hear just a little bit about your appointment, the appointment process, and what kind of motivated you to step on to the team here, the Alliance for Commerce in Englewood.
Great, thank you. So we're new to Englewood about a a year ago is when we moved here to be close to my youngest son and his family. And I've been in business most of my life. I had a very successful construction company for about 25 years here in the metro area. And the last couple of years, I've kind of been in transition, doing some freelancing and some contracting work, freelance consulting, freelance contracting. And I love business to start with. I love business because I've seen it help raise so many people up in so many ways. You know, whether it was other people starting their own businesses or whether we were able to help people grow in their careers and reach their goals and objectives through our own company. And it was actually a suggestion of my wife once we moved here, when she noticed that there was, you know, board openings. And so we really looked at it as well, a chance to get to know the community and other business people in the area. And I do love to promote business and positive change and those sorts of things. And I've been very remarkably surprised in such a good way about how much I like living here. Truly feels like a small town to me. And so glad to be here and be part of this. And hopefully I can, you know, bring a little bit of value to some of the things that the committee is working on, and helping to connect the dots between businesses and the council, the committee, and helping to encourage other businesses to come here. Hopefully I can support that and be an asset to this committee.
Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you being part of what we're doing here. Maybe we can go around the horn and do kind of a brief introduction of, you know, I guess who we are and a little bit about our background, just to give you a little bit of a sense of who we are and how we got to where we're at. I'll start by just saying I've got two businesses that are in the city of Englewood. Nixon's Coffee House, which is right across from the city offices. And then we also have a wholesale food production company called Chair Foods. And we've been operating in the city of Englewood for about 10 years. I became part of the Alliance for Commerce in Englewood, I think about 5 years ago. Kind of lose track of time. Darren could probably tell me exactly how long I've been in his hair. But have really enjoyed being part of the city and being an adjunct to council to give them feedback where and when they would like feedback, as well as to try to do various business initiatives that will help, or city initiatives that will help businesses in the city of Englewood. And I think we've done a few things. Boards sometimes are hard since we're all part-time and we meet once a month, but amazingly, I think we've accomplished quite a few things in the past few years. So Judy, how about you next?
Hi, I'm the vice chair of ACE, Judy Dunlop, holistic practitioner, doing consulting in nutrition and health, and a wellness lifestyle advocate. Welcome.
How about you, David?
My name is David Carroll. I'm the executive director for the Greater Englewood Chamber of Commerce here in Englewood. I've only held that position for a little over a year. Grew up in this area, left in 1990, lived in a bunch of states, primarily working within the nonprofit communities. So glad that you could be here and happy to help in any way I can.
Amy, I see you're practicing good safe distancing there.
Sorry, I couldn't get out of clinic in time, so I'm in clinic, so anyone could walk in the door at any minute. So I'm an eye doctor. I have a practice over near Broadway and Hamden called iLogic, and I'm a Colorado native, and I've been in Englewood since about I don't even know now. My son's 20, so it's been a long time. So I've been on ACE now. I think this is my 4th year, and I'm glad to have you on board.
Dylan?
Hey, welcome, Steve. My name is Dylan Rye. I'm the assistant administrator, at Swedish Medical Center. It's the large level 1 facility in Englewood. Been with Swedish for a little over 2 years now, and been on ACE since earlier this year. I think it was January or February. So a little new to the committee as well, but glad to see a new face.
You're not the new guy anymore, right, Dylan?
Exactly.
Dan, Darren, I don't know if you've met Steve or not, but why don't you guys also?
Hi, Steve. Good to see you.
I'm a
Good to see you
visitor,
again,
so
Steve.
you go ahead, Darren.
Thanks, Dan. Good to see you, Steve, and staff liaison to ACE. Thank you.
And I'm Dan Poremba. I also work with the city. I'm the Chief Redevelopment Officer within the Community Development Department.
There you have it. Hopefully sometime in the near future we'll be face to face and we'll get to fist bump or something like that to be able to say hi to one another and continue to do the good works that we have kind of laid out before us. We've got a slot for Dan. He's the guest of honor, the big star, the big kahuna today to tell us all about where we're at with the Downtown Development Authority and the good news that came from council this week. So Dan, why don't you take it away?
Brad, can I
yes.
for just a moment? Can we get the approval of minutes before we move on?
Yes, I forgot. Shelley, thank you. You're not on my screen anymore. You're supposed to wink at me or something. Yes, please. The last set of minutes that we had, would you please say that you approve them or not? So all those in favor of accepting them as they are and approving them, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I have to abstain. I was not at that meeting.
Okay. All right, Shelley.
Okay, we're good.
Okay. Thanks for keeping me on track. So Dan, you're up.
Thank you, Brad. Nice to be here with you guys today. I always get invited in when you have a block of airtime you need to fill up. So actually the timing for this one is good in terms of providing you guys some relevant updates on 2 things. So let me see here if I can share my screen, which is always a nerve-wracking little transition. There we go, I believe. And so what we want to do is I'm hoping to update you all on 2 topics, which are the redevelopment progress update generally, consisting of our Downtown Development Authority efforts to put a Downtown Development Authority in place, and also our efforts here at City Center in terms of kicking off various redevelopment initiatives. So this obviously overlaps with a number of things that you all are working on or concerned about, and as well as on the Downtown Development Authority, a couple of you, Amy and Brad, have been involved in that on the steering committee, and Swedish has been involved with that as well. So we'll touch on those. But just want to start out, just by way of context, we have an overall redevelopment action plan that we put in place with the City Council in late 2018. We tried to really prioritize it in terms of where we could get the most bang for the buck in terms of kind of revitalizing and reinventing, if you will, Englewood. And these are the top 5 priorities, and you'll see how they relate then to the 2 updates today on City Center and the Downtown Development Authority. And if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to just stop me and we'll have some conversation about it. I have probably more slides than we really need, and I'll try to get through some of them particularly quickly. But on the Downtown Development Authority, the background there is that the city had lots of studies that had been done in recent years supporting the strong need for a downtown development authority in downtown Englewood. And so it was relatively easy to pick up on that foundation and then move forward. Just by way of background, you'll see the list here of things that a DDA can do for our downtown. We currently today have no entity that really takes care of branding, marketing, promoting downtown. We have no entity that really integrates our two commercial corridors, which are kind of the east-west corridor from city center to the medical district, as well as the north-south Broadway corridor. We don't have an entity like many cities do, other than our general Chamber of Commerce, which covers all of Englewood. But many, if not most, cities today have one or more entities that really concentrate on their downtown districts. And then one of the things that we've looked at a DDA as potentially doing is really helping to engage our large stakeholders, particularly the hospitals, to engage on a more ongoing basis in community development and collaboration. You'll also see that a DDA has the opportunity to finance public improvements in a way that the city on its own can't do. And so in a general sense, one of the things we would like a DDA to do is really leverage the particularly great metro area location that Englewood has in both east-west sense as well as a north-south sense. So here's some points that just update our efforts to move the DDA forward. I mentioned the studies that largely supported it. These were both city-sponsored studies as well as independent studies. Last year, we had the good fortune of landing a Dr. Cog, a Next Step Study grant for $200,000. And investigation of the DDA was actually the top goal in that grant. So it provided the city the funding to do something that we would not have been able to do independently. So later in the year, last year, we had a competitive selection process. We brought on a team of consultants. I think there's a total, you'll see the team here momentarily, 5 or 6 different consulting firms, and they formed an entity referred to as Downtown Matters. And it was really the initiative to investigate what people wanted to see downtown be. And so there was an extensive public outreach effort. There was a website set up on the city's website. A steering committee was put in place. There was an online survey that had broad participation and reaction. I think we had 320 detailed responses to that survey. We had public Zoom-based forums. We have a social media, extensive social media. So it really penetrated the community and generated lots of feedback. And as a result of that, the staff and the consulting team were able to formulate a formal DDA recommendation for the city council. We drafted what's known as a downtown plan of development, which is the business plan for the DDA. And we drafted an organizational ordinance for city council consideration. Just coincidentally, that ordinance was approved at second reading just this past Monday evening, July 6th. And so that authorizes us now to proceed towards a formation election among the qualified voters in the DDA area. And you'll see that area shortly. Then that'll take place on November 3rd of this year. So the good news is we got city council really on board with this, and they made some tough decisions on the financial aspects of it, but we're really quite bold in doing so. And now we have the opportunity to move forward with an election, and we'll be doing extensive communication with all the business owners and property owners within the DDA boundaries. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So I just wanted to provide, here's just a quick overview of this document that's called the Downtown Plan. It's currently in draft stage. It's being reviewed by City Council, by the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's posted online for public review and comment through the end of July. And this will then be eventually the business plan for the DDA if the DDA is approved by the qualified electors in November. Here's an overview of some of the consultants on the team. It was headed up by a company called Dig Studio. Puma, a firm called Progressive Urban Management Associates, was key. They bring a lot of expertise with downtown development authorities. Portel Works, a woman named Hillary Portel, oversaw the extensive outreach and communication effort. Then we had a mobility and transportation firm, and Spencer Fain was the legal consultants to the team. And there was a lot of legal input, legal and financial input to this whole effort. Here is the steering committee, and you'll see we drew from the 3 sub areas, really had some great participation. Amy participated in a great way. Brad was out of town or under lockdown a portion of the time. Swedish had a number of representatives who helped out with this. So it was really a great effort. And even through the, what I call the COVID lockdown period, I mean, we continued to meet with them online. They provided lots of input. And actually, in some ways, I think being able to do our meetings and our public forums online worked out better because we were able to get more people to participate, I think, than if they had actually had to, drive to a central location and go through all that hassle. So it was easier for people to participate, from their home or office locations. And I think there's a lot of learning there about how we may try to conduct some of this related business going forward. It was really, really interesting. And one of the things I'll say is, even in the midst of kind of the COVID panic, if you will, just the response and the enthusiasm of the Englewood businesses and property owners was just amazingly positive and enthusiastic. And let's go forward. Let's figure our way out of this. And so one of the things we talked a lot about is how the Downtown Development Authority can really become a tool, a recovery tool for downtown going forward. So there was a section to the downtown plan that was added that really talked about how that can happen and how other DDAs in Colorado are using their entities as recovery tools. Here's just a flavor for all of the information that's on the related Downtown Matters webpage on the city site. Just extensive information on there. There have been a number of public, not only public forums, but related public events, podcasts, etc. So if you have a chance, take a look at that if you're interested. Also, if you have time to take a look at the downtown plan draft, feel free. There's a web address there, an email address to provide any commentary, any questions to the team. So we'd love to have your involvement with that. Here's an overview of the area that's proposed for the DDA. And again, you'll see it really tries to stitch together these 3 sub areas of downtown that have all, existed adjacent to each other for very, very long time, but really have kind of operated in their own worlds. And as they grow, as more people discover Englewood, these areas are kind of growing together. And so the thought is, let's more formally try to get them involved with each other and really try to gain some synergies out of their adjacencies rather than just having them coexist, if you will. The downtown plan, just to continue to give you some flavor, they tried to identify 8 big ideas for reinventing, revitalizing downtown. None of these should be very surprising because they're kind of in the vocabulary of urban redevelopment. And you'll see a little bit more on each of these as we go forward here, just to give you some more detail. So the overall plan breaks down into essentially 5 menu sections, each of which has a number of goals, strategies, and tactics. And I think it's really well done. And one of the things we try to do is move the whole planning output here into a format where it could be implemented. You know, so many plans are just great plans, but there's no focus on implementation. So this really tried to focus on things that can be done with a good number of them as being low-hanging fruit that could be done early. And from that perspective, I think it's much more of an implementation game plan than a pure kind of traditional downtown plan. Just to give you a little more flavor, here's one of the 5 areas: economy, jobs, and homes. That covers a lot. But again, you'll start to see kind of how we really focus on specifics. Interestingly, and Amy participated in a lot of these steering committee meetings and communications. One of the things we heard often was the importance of filling up the vacant storefronts in downtown Englewood. You know, we all tend to think that we're on a rising trend, or that we have been, because we have a lot of new restaurants and bars and things like that. But the reality is we have a lot of vacant storefronts. And so we need to figure out a strategy for attracting tenants for those spaces. One of the things we really looked at was that we should not just think of those likely tenants as being retail and restaurants, but that we can attract some significant employers downtown, and that will really add to the vibrancy of downtown and basically create an audience, a more of a daytime audience for our restaurants and retailers who exist there now. So I think that's going to be a big tool that we see going forward. We have a business coming into town called Core Consulting that's bringing 60 employees to a building that they purchased on South Broadway and are currently renovating. And I think they are a great template for us, for other employers that we can bring downtown. So that was a strong element in the downtown plan. As I mentioned, I think this whole idea of attracting more employers, not only downtown, but in the city center area too. I think one of the things we're starting to see post-COVID is a lot of employers who typically might have been in a high-rise kind of format downtown Denver are looking for lower rise, less dense locations that are less dependent on elevators in the future. And so I think a city center has the opportunity to fill that niche, and should give us the opportunity to attract not only these smaller South Broadway kind of employers that I mentioned, but I think a couple really significantly sized employers as well. Continuing to attract more home types and pricing points is really important. I think this council is going to be more concerned about affordable and workforce housing. You know, we'd like to see more workforce housing that can support our local businesses and support, you know, institutions like Swedish, where there's, where their staff can live, hopefully in closer proximity to their campus. Something that there's been essentially a shortage of that kind of workforce housing in proximity historically. And then, of course, homeless services is something we have to talk about. So many of our participants and survey respondents talked about the perceived issues with homelessness, and they all really revolved around feelings about security, concerns about cleanliness in the downtown area. So one of the things, we just have to figure out some ways to better connect the homeless with the services that are available to help them, so that they're not just left lingering, if you will, loitering is the traditional term, in the downtown area, but that we can get them in touch with some folks to help them, and that people who are visiting downtown are not concerned with security and cleanliness issues. So I think that's a very big focus for the DDA as it hopefully moves into operation. Here's one of the things I mentioned in terms of the recovery focus, really helping local businesses. Darren's group has done a fantastic job in terms of approving and processing many grants for our small businesses in Englewood, and I think much more so than most, if not all, smaller cities in the state. And we can only build on that experience so far in terms of our outreach. And then you'll see how some of the, I think, brand identity and marketing programs can help our businesses by essentially attracting more business for them. Related to that, marketing and programming, we talked about the fact that Englewood, downtown Englewood, really is without a brand identity today. It's that's the bad news. The good news is it's largely a clean slate to work with as we try to create a brand identity and related marketing and programming. We have a good opportunity to place ourselves on the metro area radar, if you will, particularly with our light rail access, something that we're not as a city taking full benefit of today. And so the DDA would look to rectify that. DDA is historically one of their big functions happens to be downtown events and programming of public spaces. And I think that would be true for our DDA as well. Talking about public spaces, again, making sure they're clean and safe. This is, again, something that this entity can do in a way that the city just doesn't have the resources or the focus on downtown to really keep those spaces as clean and safe as they should be, or to provide improvements to some of those spaces. And we're not talking in all cases about massive improvements. We're really talking about incremental improvements in terms of lighting, signage, cleanliness, that kind of stuff. Things that seem so simple, but for a city that's constrained and trying to deal with an overall, city area, it just doesn't have the resources to focus on in terms of the real downtown social and business center of the city. Mobility and transportation, here we have this tremendous regional access light rail coming into the Englewood station. We do have some degree of connectivity with the Englewood trolley service that runs east over to the medical district. But again, very, very limited today because it only runs certain hours of the day, essentially the normal work day. It doesn't extend really into evening hours. It doesn't extend into weekend hours. So, it's not there as a tool that can really support our downtown businesses. And because of its limited hours, it's really limited in terms of how it can help staff at the hospitals, as well as visitors to the hospitals and patients who may want to access the hospital via light rail. So if we can use some of the funding capacity of the DDA to extend the service hours of the trolley, create and obtain better vehicles and, you know, more crisp service schedules, I think we can really do a lot. Here's some of the ideas that relate to land use and urban design. One of the things that we focused on is we have some big parcels scattered in the downtown area that are really kind of dormant. They're underdeveloped. They have very large parking areas, and they're really just sitting there. And the problem is, you know, as they sit there, they also create big gaps in the you know, the content, the context, if you will, of downtown. So one of the things that the DDA would do is really try to help those property owners move their properties forward into the development pipeline, and see if there are things that the DDA can do working with the city to move those properties forward and see them move towards redevelopment. Now the second, you know, if there are any questions, this might be a good time to just take those on the Downtown Development Authority.
I just had a question on the language. When you use the word catalytic, what's your meaning? What's your intent for that?
I think it's, as I think about it, well, there's two. One is the DDA as it relates to a larger picture catalytic impact. You know, the downtown area is the center of business, center of commerce, center of social life for the city as a whole. So if we can improve downtown, improve the experience of downtown, I think we can make downtown, remake it into the central gathering place that it has been in the past. Also, as it becomes more sustainable, more successful, more vibrant, I think it will have a catalytic impact on all the areas of the city in terms of attracting additional employers, residents, and retailers. So there's the big picture. There's also, I use it a lot as it relates to some of these underdeveloped, and I call them dormant sites. That are kind of just sitting there. In some cases, they're vacant and have no active current uses. And in other cases, there are uses that are just really, really dated and going underutilized. I'm thinking right now, not only does that apply to portions of City Center, which you see on your screen, which is a kind of a 20-year-old dated plan, but there are two big retail centers immediately east of City Center that sit between City Center and South Broadway. One is the Englewood Marketplace, which is on faces onto Hamden. The other one is the Englewood Plaza, which faces on to Englewood Parkway. And both of those are really ripe for redevelopment, especially in our COVID impacted world where retail is going to, you know, have a really tough challenge going forward. So I think both those could be catalytic sites because they could generate a lot of activity and really fill in a big gap that just exists between City Center and South Broadway. So there's kind of the macro and the micro.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'll jump into the City Center redevelopment update and obviously answer any questions or address any thoughts you have at the end. Here's kind of an overview of what we refer to as City Center. The area in yellow was the original 55-acre Cinderella City shopping center that was opened in the mid-60s, and then they had a life cycle that extended into the 90s. and then it was redeveloped in the late 90s and right around the year 2000, so 20 years ago. So that was a 55-acre site. It was redeveloped at the time in a really kind of unique way. It was definitely a leading edge transit-oriented development project in the United States. The city leadership worked very hard with RTD to get a rail station there. We got a lot of big box, which was at the time, believe it or not, the hot trend in retailing. We were able to keep the Civic Center function in one of the redeveloped department store buildings, and then landed a really big box retailer in Walmart that generated a lot of the sales tax that allowed the redevelopment to take place. So it was a great concept at the time. It's become quite dated. And then on top of that, what happened in 2018 is that the developer that the city partnered with to develop the retail face of the project, which is essentially those 3 square blocks in red there that you see that face on to Hampton, they were foreclosed on. They had a peculiar type of loan. They had no recourse liability under that loan. They knew that the time had come to think about renovating that entire area, but they couldn't restructure the loan in a way that would make sense for them to do that. So they walked away. The bondholders who represented the debt on the property foreclosed, and they typically work with an entity called the special servicer. And we have gone through now one special servicer, and we're on the second one, and really trying to motivate them to position that property and market it as a redevelopment opportunity, which I think, another potential benefit for us of COVID is that the impact of the retailers on the retailers in there probably is going to tip the scale where that special servicer entity will probably want to market that property as more of a redevelopment play. And I'll show you how that interfaces with what the city's thinking is. The good thing that also came out of that foreclosure is that it really got the city council thinking about the need for redevelopment of this area. But for that foreclosure, they probably would have been perfectly happy just leaving it as is. But that moved them forward. So that was a big plus. And here I just tried to kind of outline, and we've had this as our discussion with city council, what are the benefits of city center redevelopment? And we want to disrupt what's obviously a downward trending dated retail center and bring it back, make it the center of the city, make it a attractive place, a walkable place. We do want to add hotel, more office, more residential to an area that really is very underdeveloped today. We want to make it more vibrant, sustainable, let it support the historical downtown area, and of course generate some financial benefits for the city. I think what I look at is it's not an asset of the city today that allows us to retain and attract employers, retailers, and residents. I mean, it's not the asset that it should be, and I think we have an opportunity to turn it into that. So some more bullets to just try to capture our redevelopment progress, starting again with that foreclosure in late 2018. City Council let us initiate a master developer procurement process in March of last year. In February of this year, we actually selected a preferred developer, a company called SKB out of Portland, really a great company. And we've been working with them on what I'll show you is the city controlled property on the next plan, on the next slide here. So we've been talking about the red property, which is the foreclosed property, but all that property to the west that includes the Civic Center building, the parking structure, the area around the public plaza, and then the big north parking lot. All of that is controlled by the city of Englewood. And then ironically, the land in red is indirectly controlled because that land is all ground leased from the city by the ownership of that property. So in essence, the city in one way or the other has control over, essentially half of that originally 55-acre area. Let me just bounce back to the prior slide here. I'll mention we worked through two early phase development agreements with SKB. First one was approved by council in February. Second one on June 1st, that was called the preliminary development agreement. That lays out how we'll continue to work together through the balance of the year. And the idea is that we'll end up with a mutually acceptable redevelopment agreement and a master development agreement between the city and SKB either late this year or early next year. So we have an interesting briefing coming up at the City Council study session next week. SKB will be briefing City Council on their early progress. And, this is going to be a relationship building endeavor that we're going through. So it'll be interesting to see how that conversation continues to unfold between council and SKB. And as you might guess, our city council historically has been somewhat fearful of change. So these are trying conversations, and they stepped up to the plate big time, as I mentioned, on the Downtown Development Authority. They've really gone along with us on our recommendations on the need for redevelopment and the mechanism to unlock redevelopment. So I give them a lot of credit, but it's always a bit tenuous because instinctually they'll go, the starting point is, oh God, why do we need to change? Don't tell us we need to change, and but change is inevitable, and the good news is we have a lot to work with. And then I also mentioned that, we continue to work with the firm, the special servicer that's representing the bondholders on the former wine garden property. And we are making some good progress with them. Some things that might appear damaging, for example, a piece of their property contains the 24-hour fitness building. 24-hour fitness has closed that property. So that I think creates some additional opportunities for the city in our conversations with that firm. Here's just a little bit of an overview on SKB. They really are a strong developer in the Western United States. They focus on very specific markets, including Denver. We like them because they take on complex redevelopment projects. They're very good at working with cities, which, as you might imagine, with dealing with a city bureaucracy, there's a certain amount of what I refer to as brain damage that comes along with that. They have a lot of experience in that brain damage, a lot of patience, and we've been very, very pleased with them so far. Another really nice thing about them is that they engaged and have worked with over many years tribal architects. Tribal Architects is a great local architectural firm. Ironically, they were the planning and architectural firm that was involved in the initial redevelopment of City Center 20 years ago. So they have a lot of background knowledge, and they have a lot of experience working on this kind of urban redevelopment project. They worked on Denver Union Station. And they also worked on another intriguing project that has another phase coming up, which is Clayton Lane and Cherry Creek North in Denver. Together, I think that's just a really, really powerful team. And they're going through some great explorations in tandem with the city staff. Here's just kind of an overview. Public engagement is going to be a big part of the redevelopment discussion. The interesting thing is they have an opportunity to really mirror what the Downtown Matters team did, which brought City Council a lot of comfort about the extent of public outreach and involvement. And so the City Center redevelopment team is really going to have an opportunity to mirror that and take that into account in terms of orchestrating the public outreach over the balance of this year. And with that, that's it. And if you have any questions or thoughts, be happy to talk to you about them.
Dan, I do have a question. I'm curious, this process has been going on long enough that other businesses kind of outside of those three areas have probably called your office or you've chatted with directly. What's kind of been the support or not of other businesses in the area that fall outside of that area?
That's a good question, Brad. I don't know exactly how to answer that. I mean, my focus tends to be really on, you know, our central business district and our downtown. So I really communicate most of the time with firms and businesses and property owners that are in that area. I think long term, you know, I'll just mention what we have ideas about things we want to do outside of downtown. We really want to nurture South Broadway. We've talked, for example, about, we hosted a Build Small podcast that talked about how a lot of creative development can continue to be done on South Broadway. We do have interest in seeing all of our used car lots as eventually transition to other uses. So there's been a thought about kind of creating a initiative to look at that holistically. And then, you know, I've gotten involved in some specific projects like the redevelopment of the former Kmart at Bellevue and Broadway, where we had opportunities to basically get involved and try to bring some help to redevelopment situations that were particularly complex. But I think between those and focusing on the city area, you know, the city center, downtown area themselves, I've had less extensive communication with others than you might think.
Okay. Well, and the only reason that I asked is, you know, it's clear what the focus is, and I'm not questioning the focus at all, but there are businesses, is another portion of Englewood that falls outside of that, and
Yeah.
I'm just curious if they feel slighted or if they feel supported in the fact that Englewood is trying to bolster things just in general, which I think brings all boats, you know, the tide will bring all boats up, and I'm hoping will impact all of those areas.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I'm sitting here today working on starting to, you know, work on some messaging for the DDA election. And one of the topics I'm trying to address is how, again, this, you know, question Judy asked about, what's the catalytic impact of what we do downtown on the rest of the city? And, you know, how can we establish that and communicate about it? You know, another catalyst, I'm sitting here looking at Dylan, and I think about, you know, one of the things we have, you know, made a concerted effort to try to do more collaboration with the hospitals. Hopefully we'll continue to build on that. They've been nicely involved in the downtown Development Authority exploration so far. But God, we have a great opportunity here. We have this great medical district, with these 2 world-class hospitals, and development has kind of taken place organically around there, particularly on Old Hampton. And how do we nurture that? How do we really collaborate? Old Hampton could be the coolest street in all of Englewood when it comes right down to it. There's so much that's in the early stages there, and if we can just try to find ways to bring it all together, and get the hospital senior management away from all the busy stuff that they're always involved in once in a while, we can make some great stuff happen over there and really create kind of a world-class medical, neighborhood, medical district. One of the things that the DDA can do, and I'm just rambling a bit, but we have very poor wayfinding from the streets around the medical district to the hospitals, and that's certainly one of the things that the DDA can focus on and could really help establish that area as an identifiable, medical district. So hope that helps a little bit.
I have just a quick question. A couple of people have asked me, when could we expect to see something physically different as a result of the DDA? What's a reasonable time frame? Are we looking at 18 months, 24 months, 3 years? What are we looking at to literally be able to physically say, that happened because of the DDA?
Great question, Amy. I'm trying, of course, I am looking for the low-hanging fruit. I mean, where can we make some things happen right away?
Signs?
I would say this, more than physical change, one of the things that the DDA can do is sponsor, particularly like in collaboration with the chamber, some things that start to change the atmosphere, if you will. Like we're working on these pop-up entertainment events right now called Englewood Pops. There was one this morning that was staged, if you will, outside of Craig Hospital at the shift change, and then later in the morning outside of Nixon's. And it's so nice to see people actually get together, enjoy something, have an opportunity, safely distanced and all that, to kind of rediscover that there are these businesses out there that are continuing. And if we can bring some of that support to those businesses. So I would say those types of things. We've looked at the opportunity to do lighting changes, signage changes, maintenance changes for the businesses on Broadway. There's this whole outdoor seating effort that Darren and David worked on. There's the common consumption area, where you can actually get a drink and a little food and walk around outside. So if we can keep working on some of those small initiatives while we're waiting for the bigger things to happen, I think we can start to change the environment, if you will. And so I think that's where we can see actual evidence of the DDA's existence.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Dan?
You guys did good. It looked like you all stayed awake. So thank you.
Well, there's some new information in there. I've heard your pitch a few times and you've kind of updated it. So I'm actually interested in attending this study session on Monday with SKB. And I assume it's going to be a Zoom session? Okay.
Yeah.
Regular time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, I really think, again, even the city council meetings on Zoom have been a lot more productive, just a lot more convenient to attend. you don't have to come here to the Civic Center building and put up with all the inconvenience of that. And I think they're really quite effective. So.
Well, great. Dan votes for Zoom calls from now on, from here on out. Well, if there's nothing else, and you need to get on to other things, Dan, thank you for coming and being part of our meeting and giving us an update. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. We'll catch you up a bit later, probably in a couple of months.
All right.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you, Dan. Take
You're
care.
welcome.
We have one more official item on our agenda, and that is to elect chair and vice chair for the Alliance for Commerce in Englewood. We should have actually done that kind of in the middle of this whole outbreak stuff. So we're a little bit late in doing that, but this is kind of our first meeting that has lent itself to being able to do that. So process-wise, what we'll do is we'll open it up to nominations, and anybody can nominate a person or yourself, and then from there, then we will vote. Shelley will actually do a roll call for each of the two positions so that each of us can vote. If there, unfortunately, we're missing Rita, Nathan, and Drevis, which I would love to have, them participate in, but as for now, they won't be able to, vote, on this and offer up anything. So I will just open the floor up to find out, what kind of nominations that we have.
So we can only nominate the people that are here. Like I can't nominate Andrea.
True.
That's a good question.
Yeah. I believe that is correct.
Yeah, I forgot about Andrea. Darren, can we nominate somebody who's not here?
We haven't faced this in the past, so I don't know that that would be a good idea to nominate someone that's not here unless they've expressed a desire to serve in that capacity in the past. And I don't know that Andrea has, but if Andrea has disclosed to you offline that she'd be interested in serving in that capacity, a nomination would be worthwhile.
I retract it because I haven't spoken with her. There's so few of us here, so just was curious.
Okay. Judy, turn your mic on.
Sorry. I did have a little bit of an exchange today, and it does look like she's going to have quite an impact with family health matters in the next 6 months. So I think that may be what her focus is going to have to be.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for touching base with her. Okay.
Well, then I'll nominate Brad again and Judy again. You guys did a great job. I'm fine with that.
All right. How about we take them one at a time, and would you like to nominate Judy as a chair also, or what's your intent here? So let's just focus on the chair first, and then we can go to the vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Judy for vice chair. We'll just put the same positions, and then Brad for chair.
Okay.
We'll need a second.
I'll second both of those.
Okay. I feel a whistle blowing in the background. Is there any other nominations? Okay. So why don't we go through these? I guess we still need to do this officially, Shelley. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that officially. Amy?
Yes.
Dylan?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes for Judy, and I'd probably appropriate for me to abstain from my own vote.
And Steve?
So in this case, as an alternate, do I Am I voting since you are,
You're making the quorum, so you are voting.
okay.
You made the quorum.
Yes.
And Judy will abstain.
Yeah, and yes for Brad.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Darren, any words of wisdom?
Not really words of wisdom. The chair serves as the leadership of the group and serves these committees in the absence of the chair. The vice chair will serve to conduct the business of the group. And together with the chair and vice chair and the council liaison, we establish the agendas for each of the ACE meetings. And the chair and vice chair play a key role for this committee. Brad and Judy, thank you and congratulations.
Can I ask what the term of service is, just so that I can remember?
It can be 2 one-year terms.
Okay,
And then that is from when to when?
so we're in the second.
You're starting number 2, correct?
Okay.
Right, but it starts now or it starts back when we should have taken it?
Well, gosh, I don't want to pretend to be an attorney, but we did our best to get it here. We'll be doing our best to get it again. So we'll shoot for another 12 months.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure we get expectations set for everybody.
And Shelley can override this if she knows otherwise, but we're
I don't know.
so we're taking this as a 12-month appointment. Shelley, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So why don't we go around the horn, and if there's any other comments that each of the folks would like to make, please do so. So Judy, we'll start with you.
Well, I wasn't able to get back with him, but I had heard something about Greg at Englewood Tavern when things were closed. And I don't know if any of you are aware of that, and I don't really know the specifics. And then things opened up where I guess they were open and then he was busy, where they were able to have takeout alcohol with the food. And with some kind of a labeling or something over the top of the bottle, or, you know, if it was by the glass, I'm not sure how they did it. And he was interested in talking to me about it. I just wasn't able to check back with him, whether that was something that they were doing, or has anyone else heard about any of that going on in Englewood? Other restaurants or bars?
So there is an open container provision in 2 districts on Broadway, and businesses that have a food service component and an alcohol service component can sell basically alcohol to go within that district, and they have to be labeled. Now, I don't know all the particulars about it, but basically, if I buy a pizza and a beer, I can, if that beer is labeled, you can exit the restaurant and eat that in a common area. Brad, it sounds like you have a comment about that too.
No, I was just saying there are other cities in the metro area that are doing it. So I think that the governor made provisions to allow that to happen based on, you know, each city's desire and how they wanted to make that work. So, you know, I'm happy that Englewood is doing that, because it does give all the restaurants an opportunity to do it. Maybe, I'm guessing, Judy, one of the things he might ask you is, hey, how long is this going to last? So that's a really great question, but I think generally I've seen favorable results from all the people that I've spoken to about this.
And the tavern is in the district. It is in the designated area.
Okay.
So
Okay.
as long as he follows those guidelines, then he's
Right.
eligible. There are other restaurants and establishments that are not in the district, but he is.
I see. Okay, so things are probably being taken care of and everything's fine, unless he had any other comments, and I'd be happy to share those with you. Thank you.
Amy?
I don't have anything to add at this time, just except that I'm glad to see that some things are still moving forward, like the DDA, and that everybody's been doing their best in this time period. And you can tell when you talk to people that everybody's been doing the best they can.
Dylan?
There we go. Having a little mute trouble there. Not too much to add, but I just wanted to give a quick update as what I'll call the healthcare liaison for this group as we talk about COVID. Admissions-wise, although we're seeing the numbers across the country increase in terms of positive individuals, the number of people that are hospitalized have not increased at our facility. So just as a barometer for Englewood's health, we only have about 9 individuals that are in-house that are positive right now. At our high, which was back in April, the very early beginnings of April, we were nearing 70. So a dramatic decrease that we've seen there, and that's held very consistently. We only have 2 people that are patients of interest in-house, and those are people that are pending tests. So the testing and the throughput there is also there. So we're getting people through and we're getting them tested, which is a really good thing. Our PPE supplies are in great order, so we're able to take care of folks, which is also a change from what we had back in April. There was a lot of disruption since most things that we get come out of Wuhan, China, and so everything was a little delayed. The second thing is we are noticing, and I think this is a good forum to bring this up as we all have family members and people that we know within the community. This is a statement that spans all of Colorado, but our ED volumes are down about 25%, and that's not a good thing. We're noticing that people are spending a lot more time putting off their treatment or going into our EDs because they're afraid of contracting coronavirus in our hospital. What that's resulted in is some really unfortunate cases where people have had strokes and waited 14, 15 days to come in, and by that point, there's severe damage that we could have prevented early on. And so my ask of you all is, as you're out in the community, just speaking to people about using medical care when appropriate and utilizing our services so that they're not having their acute injuries become a lot worse because of inaction. And then the third thing is a positive thing. So as you all probably know, Swedish Medical Center is part of the Continental Division within HCA, which is a national organization. And the IBM Watson report just came out for 2020, and Health One, which is the Denver branch, as well as Wichita, Kansas, which is our sister part of our division, we were recognized as the #1 large healthcare system in the country. So that's a big accomplishment that we're very proud of, especially bringing that here to Englewood as well, and having that sort of prowess here. We're very proud of that. So something good that we'll be celebrating next week.
Congratulations.
That's all I have. Thank you.
That's great. Steve, any comments?
Well, definitely congratulations, Dylan. That's a great accomplishment for your organization. And so I'm really pleased with what I've seen also with Dan's presentation. And so I'm excited to get to work and help out. It's good to see the direction that that this alliance is going, and pleased to be on board.
All right. David?
Great. Just a couple of updates for us at the chamber. We've spent most of this, last couple months providing guidance to our businesses and finding funding options and helping them with the funding options. As a chamber ourselves, we've had to pivot a little bit since many of our programs includes bringing people together. And so we've done some webinars that I think were somewhat successful with the city. They've been seen by hundreds of people. In fact, our first webinar was seen by over 300 people and shared multiple times. And they were something that I think we're very proud of, in that we were talking about signage during COVID. And one of our Harmonic Media was on there with us and talked about how you could look at elevators in a different way, and how you could look at different things in a different way that would allow for the signage to help us social distance. And what I found interesting about that was, 2 weeks later, CSNBC was talking about how would we ever get people in elevators and how is that going to work out. And so I think we're very proud of the fact that we were talking about this way before even on a national level. And so to Dylan's point, one of the things that we've also done was we did a webinar most recently with Dr. Baker from Craig, talking about vaccinations and how important that is. And I just looked before we got on, and that webinar has been seen by over 400 people. So people are out there, at least we're passing that information along. For us, the big challenge will be how do we move forward in getting people together, and how do we do our events in this time of the pandemic. So one last thing I'll just share, and this kind of comes out of both of my roles as both the chair of the Englewood Arts Commission and the Chamber. But we are very excited. If you happen to walk down Broadway on our main block there between El Tep and the bank building, you will see a new crosswalk. And that crosswalk is a creative crosswalk that now has forks and spoons as its indicators. In some ways, if we understand branding, right, branding is not your logo, it's the idea of what your brand is about. And we are hopeful that that crosswalk itself will guide people into what has become, in a way, an unofficial kind of culinary district of some sort, with Zomo and One Barrel and all of the new restaurants. The guy across the street, not Galileo, but you know what I'm talking.
Gallo, yeah.
Gallo. And so all the restaurants along that area. And what I would say is, if you like that, be prepared. There's a lot more coming, not only in crosswalks, but we're going to start wrapping some of our traffic boxes here soon using one of our local vendors, Harmonic Media. And so there's a lot of creativity that's being done as well to help those businesses hopefully drive some traffic down in that area. That's all I got.
Well, when you showed me that picture earlier today, David, I thought that was so great. What a creative way to get that message across, and really cool. So I would suspect that people will probably wake up a little bit when they're driving down Broadway to go, hey, there must be some restaurants in the area. So that's exciting.
You hope that they hope they'll tie that together and see what that's done. And I think, even the DDA in the small towns webinar that was put on during this period talked about how important that is to drive kind of a sense of community and feeling and traffic to areas. So thank you.
Very cool. Darren, do you have anything?
Just want a big hat tip to Dan for taking the time and presenting what he did to ACE today. I thought that was a really good discussion. I really appreciate Dan's time. Amy, hat tip to you. And Brad, I know you were also very involved with the steering committee. Now the fund begins to take a look at outreach to merchants and more involvement to support the DDA. Also, the COVID recovery and assistance grants are still valid and out there. So if you know of businesses that have not applied for but yet have been impacted by COVID, we have funds still available to support small businesses. Larger businesses can apply through the county, and there's a county resource. And so our little program funds businesses up to 25 employees. The county has a larger grant pool, and it can fund larger businesses. So larger employers can take advantage of that as well. And in the event that a small business wants to apply for both the county and the city, you can certainly do that. You would, because it's coming out of the same pot of money, essentially, you would net that out and disclose that on your application to Arapahoe County, and net that for $4,000 grant, initial $4,000 grant out. So please share that out with folks. We've got that in our social media, and we're sharing that out as well. But would definitely encourage the reopening grant for businesses that are now taking it up a notch and trying to promote and reopen. It's an additional $500. That grant is still valid. We're trying to get with the We've Got This initiative and promote this We've Got This campaign going. So that would be kind of nice to see a business get a hold of that and promote that as they start to reopen. I know last week a restaurant, Grow and Gather, just opened as fully as they could under the new regulations. So we've got over $600,000 applied on the streets in Englewood through these grant initiatives, and we're very, very pleased that. So again, I have to give the Chamber a big hat tip for what you all have done to get the word out, David. Nicely done. About the programs, resources, and information. There's been a whirlwind of activities doing this. And again, a hat tip to ACE for your involvement in reaching out to your neighbors and to the businesses. That little those COVID recovery calls that everybody made, including the mayor, and planning commission members got involved. So that was kind of really kind of a cool gesture to actually call businesses that were impacted, and they were not easy calls. So thank you to those who did. That's all I have. Thank you, Brad.
Okay.
Darren, Brad, do you mind if I?
Yeah, no, go ahead, David.
Darren, do you know, and Brad brought this up this morning as well, but I've heard from others as the PPP funding and in some cases the work attached unemployment, or what they call work share, and others are starting to slowly end their programming. Is there any thoughts to the city, I mean, for maybe even a third round of help with those funds that you guys have available?
David, that's a great question. We have not thought of have not gotten that far with the initiatives yet. We're trying to exhaust round one and round two. Round one was a $2,000 grant. Round two is now a $4,000 grant total. So if someone received round one, they could apply for round two and get a total of a $4,000 grant between the two. So we have not, David, at this time discussed a round three.
Okay. And that may not be necessary, but I know the concern is, right, is all this federal funding disappears, or this other funding disappears, and our businesses have not yet up to 100%. How do they make that work?
I just have one item. I wish Rita were here, and maybe I'll reach out and touch base with her. I understand that this week the City Council approved a new mask ordinance, and that begins tomorrow at 8 a.m. I believe, for all businesses, all people within the city of Englewood, to wear masks when they're going in businesses, and I don't think it's so much on the street as it is, going into a business or leaving a business. And I talked to Sean Lewis this morning, and he said it's really patterned after what Denver had already kind of done and established, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks ago. I can't exactly remember when Mayor Hancock did that. And I know that I guess my comment here is, and it's probably going to fall, to me to get back to Rita a little bit, is I would really like to see council figure out ways. Every time we have to tell people something they can't do, we figure out ways to help people understand what they can do. As a parent, I think we all probably can relate to, how it works best with our kids, and sometimes businesses, communities, customers are kind of the same way. It's probably good to keep that in mind. And I'd like to find out what we can do, what council might be willing to press for or ask for in the way of helping the community, helping residences, helping businesses understand what they can do. And one thing comes to mind after listening to Dylan talk about, hey, people are not going to the emergency room. I think if we had maybe a fun, lighthearted way to be able to bring some of this stuff to the awareness of the citizens and businesses in the area, hey, you can go to the emergency room, get that cut fix that's on your finger, kind of thing, something to let people know what the things that they can do, because I feel the oppressive nature of what's going on, and I'm genuinely a person that I would say is positive and kind of tend to look on the brighter side of everything. And there are times when it's like, man, I need a support group here, because this is starting to get to be drudgery of all the things that I can't do, and people reminding me of all the things that I can't do. So I think it might be important for the city, us, if we can help. I don't know, is to create something that encourages businesses, encourages residents to do, to do things, to get out, to exercise, gosh, here's where you don't have to wear a mask, maybe. You know, I know that might be a little bit sacrilege, but hey, just to, you know, to help people get a sense of, you know, we've got to use every day that God has given us, and we can't be wishing that it's 2021 and all this stuff is passed. That said, it will all pass, and we need to kind of get prepared for what's going to happen between now and then, and maybe something can be done to be a leader in this area. You know, the city of Englewood, you know, come up with some new ways of doing that. So I'll get off my soapbox. One other thing, Darren. Oh, Amy, sorry, go ahead.
This is adjacent to that. I understand completely with what you're saying. I actually talked to my landlord in the Englewood marketplace last week, the managing company, and I asked him if they could put up some sort of board that says, hey, this is why Big Lots is wearing masks this week. This is why iLogic is wearing masks this week, and trying to make it lighthearted as well. I said, you know, iLogic is wearing masks this week so that the NBA can come back, right? Or Subway's wearing masks this week so you can make sure there's no disruption in getting your guacamole, you know, or the nail salon's wearing masks this week so that your toes never look like they did in April. You know, something that is lighthearted. And so I don't know if they're going to be able to put that board up or not. I'm still talking to them about that, but you know, that's adjacent, you know, in the same vein as what you were just talking about. I think there's ways to, you know, try to flip it and make it more positive and, you know, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
We're working on a couple of things related to that. A social media campaign around We've Got This, as well as some businesses saying, you know, they're glad to have their doors open, and a real optimistic spin right now on communicating that they're open for business. Come on in and enjoy a place at a beer at the Barn House, or we did a big series of videos, and those will be rolling out very soon. Grow and Gather's video came out pretty quickly. We're also working on a special edition of the Citizen magazine that's coming out in about a week. And I'm holding one of the final editions or edits. And it's a special edition of the COVID recovery. And we're doing, we're profiling our businesses much more so in this edition than we ever have in any previous Citizen magazine. And we're also doing a staycation idea to play off of the, well, while we can't necessarily do that trip to Vegas that we had planned in September, let's do a staycation and hit 3 or 4 stops in Englewood, and also a civic event, like watch a movie in the park, and go out to eat and check out some of our unique retail in the community. Again, hat tip to the chamber for the helping to populate this with some very, very good information. But stay tuned. We'll have every business will receive the Citizen magazine. I want to see if I can get this in an email format to make sure all ACE members have this as well.
Okay. One question, kind of a Debbie Downer question, Darren. As businesses close, I anticipate now that PPP dollars for some of those that were early in will have gone away beginning of this month. There'll be some closures of businesses that will pop up on your radar. And I don't know if they necessarily always contact the city registrar or whatever, but are there some specific questions that you guys are going to ask that are standardized that will give us some data points for us to learn a little bit more why they closed? So to discern whether it was a closing like Denny's closed, or a closing like, hey, I just couldn't make this work, kind of deal. If we could quantify that so that you guys, all of us, can look at it and go, okay, there's a thread that's going through here. If we could solve this one problem, maybe we could help some businesses going forward. Audio.
Thank you. Sorry about that. That's a really good bit of feedback there, Brad. We do not have an exit interview scheduled or planned with any businesses that have announced any closures, other than anecdotal information, and they may not contact the economic development office in the event of a closure. More often than not, we don't hear about it until we hear about it through the grapevine. But I would love to have an exit interview process to understand why someone closed. Denny's was an anomaly. It was a timing anomaly and an economic anomaly. But that space will more than likely be filled. It's very likely that another Denny's may actually go in there. That was just a different operator. Some of the spaces that I'm aware of that have closed, there's a new operators going into that existing space under maybe a new name. So fortunately, I'm not hearing of a lot of vacancies as a result of this, and a lot of businesses were able to weather the storm. So just
Okay.
opening up at a little bit slower pace and pacing into opening.
Well, I don't want to volunteer all of us, but if there is a case where the city doesn't want to be actively involved in any of those questions, maybe that's something that we could pick up as a board to make some of those phone calls, just to maybe go through a list of standard questions, the best we can, condolences, to, those business closures, but come around them as a community, find out what we can discern, and then pass that data back to you guys in council to help them.
That's good feedback, Brad. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think we're at 5 or maybe a little bit after. So I'm going to, if there's nothing else, I'd like to adjourn. One last time. Is there anything else? Any other comments? All right. Amy, it's good to see you. I was just thinking about, we changed the time so that we could get, better participation from everybody. And I'm so excited to see you in the mask sitting there. I just wanted to make that one comment, to have you not having to hurry out. So thank you. And I guess next month.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care.
All right. Thanks, guys.